Hello, I just wanted to make a quick video sort of recapping what I did in 3.23 Affliction League, going over which characters I played, what I accomplished, what I'm thinking about playing next, and just sort of what worked well for me and what didn't. This video is completely unscripted, so there are probably going to be a lot of cuts in the video. And I know everyone is already talking about 3.24, the new Necropolis League, and what they want to play in that. And I will get to that, but I sort of stopped making content kind of early in this league, and just sort of stopped posting updates on what I had finished, what projects I was working on. So I just want to sort of summarize that all into one video, get this out of the way, and then I can talk about the new stuff. So first thing to mention, as you can see, I finished 40 out of 40 challenges. This was pretty easy, this league overall. None of them were too bad. Some of them were a little grindy, but most of them I had finished. Like the really grindy ones, for the most part, I had finished by the time I was done the rest of the stuff anyway. The only really grindy challenges that were left at the end were the 100 Guardian maps and the 2500 item quantity on Atlas memory maps. Those were pretty grindy. This one was actually not too bad. This was about 30 maps total. And then 100 Guardian maps obviously is 100 maps. And for those, I just used this character to rush through them really quickly. And I will talk about this character in a little bit. This is not my Whispering Ice starter that I started with. But like I said, as you can see, I have finished the challenges and I have all the MTX rewards from it. And I actually really like this set of MTX rewards. I think this is one of the few MTX armor sets we've had in a while that look really good on the smaller frame characters. So the Witch and the Ranger and the Scion. This is a Witch. This is an Elementalist. The other thing to mention in the challenges is that there was a challenge to do Uber bosses this league. I only actually did 4 of them. I just didn't bother doing the other ones. I'm sure I could do them. I just did the ones that I had. And these were all done on my Whispering Ice character. I was a little bit worried that the Exarch was going to be pretty hard because of how often that build has to stand still, and that's just a really bad thing to do in that fight. But it was actually a joke. That build, that Whispering Ice build, has so much DPS that it didn't matter. It was just very, very easy. So this is the Whispering Ice character, and if you've watched any of my content from earlier in the league, then you've already seen it and most of what I've done with it. The passive tree hasn't really changed a whole lot. I did end up taking some extra crit, I think, that I didn't have before. I don't know if it was this wheel. Oh, it was actually these 2 points. These staff crit nodes, I ended up taking these instead of something else that I had on here last time I posted an update. And anyway, this build ended up with 2200 intelligence, almost 2300. Very, very good for DPS. It could be much higher. The amulet still is. This is a high-end crafted amulet, but not top. Like, this is not dual influenced amulet or like a triple synthesized amulet. Either of those could be significantly better than what this is. This amulet, however, is actually one small thing about it is my biggest regret on this character, and that is that I YOLO Exalted Slammed a suffix onto it, thinking, whatever, it's got stats that I want, it's just missing a suffix. And I ended up with regen, which is completely useless for this build. And then I immediately realized I could have crafted Aspect of the Spider onto it with beast crafting instead, because that's a guaranteed suffix and it's really strong. And I probably have enough mana left over to squeeze Aspect of the Spider into my build, because I actually never ended up getting enough mana, unreserved mana, to add Zealotry into the build, which was like the next step for getting more damage. I never got to it, but it's not like it really mattered anyway. This build had plenty of DPS. It took down every Uber that I did in, like, I don't know, 20 seconds, very, very quickly. For the ones that you can do, like Exarch and Eater, like 20, 30 seconds, and they were done. The ones like Shaper, that takes longer, obviously. So as for the actual content that I did this league, I did a little bit of everything because, well, 1, because the challenges sort of encouraged it, and 2, because there were things I wanted to try, and there was the new farming strat with Abyss and extra projectiles, and just MFing through Abyss like that. And I tried that, and it was pretty good, but it wasn't the best thing I tried. I think that you have to actually be set up as a proper MF character for that to be good, or for that to be really good. And I wasn't, and it was still fine, but I did some other things this league that were better. And one thing I did accomplish on this character, if I go talk to Nico, is I achieved 1,000 solo delve. This is quite deep into delve. This is not like, how should I put this? This is very deep delve, but this is not like competing with the top delvers or anything. But for your average build, this is very far into delve. Delve stops scaling at 2,500, and delve gets really profitable now somewhere around 250, maybe even earlier than that. Like, you start running into a lot of bosses that early, ever since the rework to delve where it ramps up faster. This is very, very good for delve. I made I'll talk about the currency I made, and it was a lot in a minute. And this was easy. It was very, very easy getting down here. There were just like a couple nodes where I had to add Frostbomb back into the build for dealing with otherwise immortal enemies that were standing on consecrated ground and just healing forever. But other than that, it was just very easy. I'm sure this build could go to 2,500. By the time I got to 1,000, I wasn't interested in pushing delve anymore. It gets pretty monotonous pretty quickly. If you do like delve a lot, this build can definitely do it. And the reason I brought up delve first, right after the Abyss Affliction farming method, is because delve was by far the most profitable thing I did this league. Not even close. In that push of getting to 1,000 delve, I farmed probably 250 divine worth of fossils and resonators, just fossils and resonators. That's not counting any boss drops, and some of the boss drops I had were huge. So if I go to my delve tab here, you see I still have all these to sell. I've been working on selling off my delve tab. Actually, let me switch characters because I can show you what I've made so far. So this inventory so far, these divine orbs are all from selling fossils and resonators. This is just what I've been collecting. I didn't really bother liquidating my delve tab earlier in the league, even though we're at the very end of the league now, because I just didn't need to. My characters were basically done, and I didn't really care about the currency. But now I'm sort of just seeing, okay, how much did I actually make, and can I maybe sell off enough of my bulk to get something cool before the league ends? A mirror or something, I don't know. So the delve tab you already saw, but I'll just have them both on the same screen here in a second. So all of this, plus all of this. There's 122 divine here, and there's, I don't know, probably another, at least probably close to 100 divine. I'm not sure. Between resonators and fossils. The resonators especially are worth quite a bit. And these prices I've put up are pretty generous, to be honest. So yeah, delve, very, very profitable. And as I said, that did not count the boss drops. And let me bring up one of those boss drops. Okay, here we are. So this Precursor's Emblem. This did not actually sell for a mirror. This sold for 130 divine. This obviously is not specifically a boss drop. You have to have 3 other rings drop and then combine them in a vendor recipe. I had the 2 more expensive rings drop, and then I decided to just buy the third one. The third one that I had to buy was 1 divine, and then this Precursor's Emblem on screen right now sold for 130 divine. And at that moment, that was the most expensive item that had ever dropped for me that I then sold. However, it did not end up being the most expensive item that dropped for me that I sold in this league. And I'll get to that later, actually, because that was not part of delves, and I want to finish talking about delve first. The other thing that came up was a fractured bone ring, and I think I have a picture of it if I can look for it. Okay, I found it. This is the bone ring that I sold. This dropped in delve as a fractured base. It did not drop with all of this crafted stuff on it. But since I was delving, and since I have a pretty decent understanding of crafting, and I had all the fossils to work with anyway, I threw a few fossils at it, maybe 2 divine worth of fossils, and ended up selling it for 30 divine, as you can see in the trade message there. I think the base for this, when I searched the base, the fractured attack speed, minion attack speed base, it was, I think, 8 divine at the time, 8 or 9 divine for what I had. And I had catalysts because I was farming Ultimatum, and then I had fossils because I was farming Delve, and I was like, well, I know how to craft this anyway, so I'm pretty sure I can craft this to be worth quite a bit more. And yeah, about 2 divine worth of fossils later, and I was able to sell this for 30 divine. So that was another thing that came from Delve. And so all in all, Delve made me somewhere around like 400 divine this league, just getting down to 1000 Delve depth. And that's really, really strong. Okay, with Delve out of the way, let's talk about that item I mentioned that sold for even more than that Precursor's emblem did. And that is this That Which Was Taken jewel, which dropped in literally the next map that I ran after selling the Precursor's emblem. I had the Affliction boss spawn, and he dropped this completely insane jewel that has 3 of the best possible mods it can have on it, and then a 4th mod that is, it's all right, it's fine, it's useful. This jewel sold for 160 divine, so this was really a big league of jackpots for me. I had a lot of big jackpot drops this league that sold for a ton, and that is usually not the case for me. Usually for me, I am selling consistent moderate income things like essences, scarabs, fossils, things like that, not big jackpots like this, and I had 2 of them this league, which is just crazy. So that was really fun. And I do actually have one more big jackpot to show off. And while I'm at it, let me talk about probably the next most profitable thing I did this league, which was Ultimatum. People were clowning on Ultimatum early on, saying it's garbage, it's not dropping anything, it's not worth anything. But the funny thing is, there's this thing called market correction or economic equilibrium, where if nobody is farming something, and that thing is necessary for something, the value goes up. It's really simple. So currently inscribed ultimatums, and like I said earlier, this is the end of the league. I'm not really bothering selling everything, but I could be selling these. Currently they're 2 divine each. They were 1 divine each for most of the league. So even if we count them at 1 divine each, this is, I don't know how many are here, like 30. So that's like 30 divine. Prismatic catalysts have been insanely expensive this league. They are currently 4 or 5 to a divine, like 5. Let's say 5 to a divine. So this is 25 divine right here, just this pile. I used to have more tainted catalysts, but I used them really foolishly on something, and tainted catalysts are like almost 1 divine each. They weren't quite that expensive earlier on. I think they were around like 70 chaos each for most of the league. Fertile catalysts, these are 25 chaos each roughly. And then the other catalysts, these are all, like, most of them are not worth that much, but there's the 3-to-1 recipe on catalysts where you can kind of gamble to get more prismatics or more fertile catalysts. And I'm not going to bother adding up exactly what this tab is worth. Plus, I've been selling a lot of them during league. This was the first thing I did. This, like, my league start strategy was to just farm Ultimatum because it's my favorite thing in the game. It's the thing I was most excited for coming back. I was really sad that it was gone for so long, and I was just really happy that it was back in the game. And this was how I made all my currency early on. Ultimatum was very, very, very profitable. So one more funny jackpot that I wanted to talk about that came from Ultimatum. Maybe the most unassuming, unexpected jackpot I've ever had was this Le Heup. A Le Heup of all, a perfect Le Heup of all, with a corruption with % increased strength and dexterity. And you can see the trade message from when I sold it, that one, I sold it for 12 divine, and I don't know, you tell me, have you ever sold a Le Heup for 12 divine? This came from Ultimatum. It dropped this way in Ultimatum. You can see the trade message, the guy saying, how and why do you have this? And I said, look, Ultimatum, that's just how it dropped. Ultimatum is really cool. I like it a lot. And I might not start with it next league. because I did it a lot this league, and I'm considering starting with Blight this league, actually, because Blight was actually the next thing I did that really impressed me this league. That it was probably around the same level of profitability as Ultimatum, maybe a little higher. But I did Blight later in the league when I was more set up for it. And that is a good time to talk about this character that I'm on as well. So this character is an Elementalist using Glacial Cascade to ignite. And this character is built very similarly to like an Ethereal Knives Ignite character or Wave of Conviction Ignite. I had tried EK Ignite kind of recently in a gauntlet, I think. Not a gauntlet, one of the official events. I think it was the event where Sentinels were back in the game briefly. And I liked it, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. And then in 3.23, Glacial Cascade got a pretty big buff to the final burst damage. And I looked at it in PoE, and it looked really strong. So I decided, yeah, I'll try this. And it worked really well. This build is really, really solid. I kind of want to just hop into a map so you can see it, because it'll be easier to show it. Let me find a map with good density. Okay, so here's a cemetery map. I probably won't clear the whole thing. I just want to show you what this build looks like, how it works. It's basically just self-cast Ignite and or self-cast Glacial Cascade, and the Ignite proliferates through everything and clears really, really well, really quickly. I don't know what's up with those flashing squares that have been in the game for a few weeks now. Hopefully an expedition spawn, because that is like the best demonstration of how fast this build can be. Sure. The only thing with this build, and also with the MTX I'm running, the Lotus MTX from the challenges, is that there's a lot of particle effects, and maybe not the best thing if you don't have the best GPU. And I don't really. I have a 1080 Ti, which a friend of mine actually gave to me. He wasn't using it anymore. And I was having some problems with my computer kind of recently that were preventing me from streaming, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, but basically they're all fixed, so things might be changing soon. It doesn't look like an expedition spawned, unfortunately. I have the node where it's one big expedition explosion. I guess it could be over here still. Doesn't look like it though. Yeah, as you can see, you just kind of like point in one direction, or point at a pack of mobs, throw Glacial Cascade at them, and it melts the whole pack. Just one cast. I could do the Blight there. I'm not going to, just because it takes too long. This build is very, very, very good at Blight because of the Ignite proliferation. It just kind of constantly burns through everything that spawns. And the way it does that is with a combination of Barracks or Spite, so enemies that die will spread their ignites to nearby enemies, and also a cluster jewel notable called Fan the Flames, where ignites you inflict spread. So the ignites spread both when the enemy is ignited, it will spread to nearby enemies, and then if an enemy dies near another enemy, it will also spread ignites to nearby enemies, and that very, very quickly spreads through huge packs. No matter how dense the pack is, it will. In fact, the denser the pack, the better. You can clear multiple screens at a time with it. The big downfall to this, or the big downside to this build, is that it's pretty squishy. As you can see, it's less than 3,000 life. I am not suppress capped, although it's a decent. Actually, it's not decent right now because I changed my gear a little bit. I do have the lucky suppression, so it's a little bit higher than this, but I've been using the Ralakesh boots with Alessia's Delight for Affliction charges. Go figure, Affliction charges would be very strong in Affliction League. And these Ralakesh boots, they're getting nerfed a little bit. They're losing the 30% movement speed, which is fine. It basically means that they're going to be bossing only boots, I think, for most people. which is already what they were kind of best at anyway. Like right now, they're too good as like all-rounder boots. They are so good. It is like impossible to outdo these for scaling spell damage on any other boots, really. I don't think there's a single other item you can put in the boot slot that is as powerful as this for spell damage. And because they have like the resistances and movement speed, they're just too good. It's just all-rounder. So without the movement speed, it means nobody's going to use them for mapping for the most part, I think. So they will just be specifically bossing boots, and they'll still be very strong because that's the only nerf they got. The reason these are so strong is because that count as maximum number of Endurance Frenzy power charges. That gives you all of the bonuses from having Endurance Frenzy and power charges. So even though you can't see charges on my character, right now I have the extra crit from the power charges, the extra damage and attack speed and cast speed from the frenzy charges, and the damage reduction and elemental resistances from the endurance charges. And on top of that, with the Maven belts like Alessia's Delight or Arn's Anguish, or I forget the name of the other one, you can get the Affliction charges and the Frenzy charges. In this instance, you can have both. You count as having maximum Affliction charges and maximum Frenzy charges always, which is crazy. And Affliction charges here, just so I'll show it just so you can see it. 8% more damage with ailments and 8% more effective non-damaging ailments per Affliction charge. So obviously really good with Ignite. But yeah, as for this character, it is very, very similar to building Wave of Conviction or EK Ignite. The reason my gems are kind of thrown off right now is because I was using, I think, a Cast on Death Portal. This character is squishy, and I was just trying to rush those last few challenges to get my 40 out of 40. Before, I was using Malevolence with Divine Blessing. I never ended up actually getting enough ES to fit this into the build, this Divine Blessing, ES and mana, because this is an Eldritch Battery build. So I am actually considering league starting this next league for a couple reasons. One is that I never really finished this character, so I don't really like to leave it unfinished. Although I also like to sort of play new builds and solve new puzzles every league, and this one is it's already solved. I already know how to build the character. I just didn't finish building it. That's all. The other reason I'm thinking of league starting it is because I'm thinking of targeting Blight early on, or Expedition, the things that spawn a lot of mobs together that I can just very easily clear with this kind of build. It's a farming strat that I haven't done before on league start, so I am considering doing that. So I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention in this video is the ideas I've been coming up with for next league, what I might want to league start. As I already said, I might just start this character again. So far, the main candidates that I've come up with are, well, besides this character, Dominating Blow on Champion. Normally I do that build on either a Guardian or a Scion, but I think it might actually be better on Champion now, but it's a little bit trickier to solve the quality of life stuff like ailment immunity on Champion. Another one I've been looking at is General's Cry with the transfigured Shield Crush of the Chieftain. That is one that scales fire damage with the armor on your shield, and I would be doing that on a Juggernaut with and using Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh to get Warbringer from Berserker, which is funny because the skill is called Shield Crush of the Chieftain, and even though I'd be playing a Marauder, I would be only using nodes that are not from Chieftain. The other build I've been looking at, and this is one that a friend of mine has also been looking at, is Mjolnir Archmage. And this one's interesting because Archmage is getting changed to scale with your maximum mana instead of the cost of the skill. Mjolnir gives skills a 0 mana cost, which should override the also increased mana cost from Archmage. With the old Archmage, Mjolnir was not compatible with it at all because that 0 mana cost meant that you couldn't get the bonus from the added. Old Archmage required a higher mana cost to get bonuses. Now it doesn't do that at all. So that looks like a really cool build idea. And hold on, let me bring up the message I sent to him because it explains the build pretty well. So we were talking about this build, and I said, all right, hear me out. Mjolnir, Squire, Arc of Oscillating with Chain Hook as the triggering attack. And why Chain Hook? Because it generates rage. That's really the only reason why. It generates rage and it moves you around. Something like Cyclone or Flicker Strike is probably better, but hey, it gives Chain Hook a reason to exist. I think the only other build I've really been looking at is Volcanic Fissure, because I know it's very strong. I know it is. It's both very strong and very good mechanically, because it's basically a ranged attack that scales as a melee attack, which lets you do a lot of really cool things with it. And I want to play it. I've been wanting to play it, but I would basically just be copying someone else's homework doing that, which I've done before. I don't really mind doing that. But I do like solving a puzzle on a build, like I said, so I haven't really decided. One other thing that I'm not really considering right now, because I think it's really weak, is not Summon Reaper, but one of the Transfigured gems that gives you 3 Reapers but removes their bonus damage with bleeding. I have been trying to figure out how to make that skill good, and I can't find a way to do that. Like, maybe it is intentionally tuned pretty low, because just having the 3 powerful permanent minions is really, really good mechanically. You don't have to do anything. I actually tried playing it in Gauntlet and did okay. It died in Act 9, but got to level 70, I think, before I died in Gauntlet. And I died to Shavron, because Shavron is... Act 9 Shavron is always a pain for minion builds, but especially with extra projectiles. So I've been thinking of different ways to scale this if you were to use the gem that gives you 3 of them without the bleed. So obviously you wouldn't use bleed, because the normal Reaper is better. You wouldn't go Ignite, because like a single minion with a bigger hit would be better, something like a Golem. I don't really know what kind of builds would do minion Ignite, but it wouldn't be Reaper of the Revenants is what that one is called. You wouldn't do poison on it, because any of the like army minions like SRS, skeletons, zombies, whatever, any of those would be better. Even though SRS is getting nerfed on poison. SRS is getting nerfed on everything except popcorn in the upcoming league, but it would still be better than this for poison, at least. And the only thing left really at that point is Impale, which is fine, but I tried building it in PoB with Impale, and the numbers just looked really, really low. So I don't know if this gem, that Transfigured gem, Summon Reaper of the Revenant, is just a dead gem, or if it's intentionally tuned really weak so that it can be balanced around the fact that it's just an automatic DPS around you where you don't have to do anything. It's almost like Righteous Fire, where they just do everything for you. But I think it would be cooler if there were some way to build it effectively. And I've looked at characters that exist that are using it, and most of them are like Poison, just doing what SRS Poison would do, but instead on the 3 Reapers, which, I mean, I guess that's fine. There isn't a single level 100 character in 3.23 using that skill, so that suggests to me that it's probably just not that good. And that's it. That's basically all of the builds I was considering for the next season. The only other thing I thought of, maybe just as sort of a troll, is because I think the left click change coming up is really, really short-sighted. I think it is a really bad change, moving or removing the ability to bind to left click. And it does literally nothing unless you don't have a numpad on your keyboard. Like, it's a completely toothless change to anyone who isn't playing on a 10 keyless keyboard. So what I was considering doing is just making a build that automates as many skills as possible with numlock, just to prove a point. Because you can do that. You can automate skills with numlock. There's lots of videos out there on how to do that. I'm not going to go into it. But But yeah, it's just a short-sighted and toothless change that doesn't make any sense. So I was thinking about that too, but I don't know what I would actually build around it. It's basically a troll build, so at that point, I might be trolling myself harder than the people I'm trying to prove a point to. So anyway, that is it for this video, I think. I will be playing in the new league. I will be posting updates for my new character or characters. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a bit of a new computer setup. It's not really new. It's replaced parts on my old computer, although at this point it is the ship of Theseus, where there are no remaining original parts in there except for the case. The problem I had before was actually the power supply. Replace the power supply, and all of the problems are gone. It is working fine now, which means I've been saying all of this just to say that I am planning on streaming at League Start for the first time in a couple years. I think I tried to stream 1 or 2 times in that window, and both times it went really poorly, so I just didn't stream after like the first few hours. But I can actually stream now. I've tested it. It works really well. I've been testing it, streaming in Discord to friends, etc., recording video like this just while I'm playing, and it works great. So I can actually stream again. So I will probably be streaming on League Start. I'll leave a link to the stream in the description of the video. That is it for now. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.